we have identities. We all grow up with concepts of who we are. These concepts become very dense. It's through these concepts that we relate to ourselves, we relate to each other. There's a lot of form to these concepts. We relate to ourselves as being persons, having identities. Everything is a development of who you are, who I am, relating to each other through these identities. These identities that we have as a self and as a person, what we do in this life, what we relate to in this life, are really necessary to be able to communicate with each other, and they enable us to realize ourselves within a very dense form as a person, within different interests and occupations. So it's a necessary kind of development that we all come into, and at the same time that kind of development invariably covers up the deepest levels within. So at a core, what we really are, we grow up relating to who you are, who I am, and thereby losing touch with what we are. And what we are at the core is something really different from what a person and what a self is. And yet this core awareness and core consciousness that we are is intricately involved in every part of our development and every part of our awareness. So to be able to access what we really are within at the core and at the very root, then there needs to be what I've spoken of as being like a core splitting honesty, and an honesty that is so fundamental that it reaches all the way in, all the way to the root, and breaks open at the very essence of what we are, breaks open our awareness so we begin to know what it is we actually come from. To have that kind of core-splitting truth requires a core-splitting honesty, asking the question, what am I? What am I really? In asking such core-splitting questions, invariably what comes apart is that the identity that we have as a self, relating to our feeling, our thinking, our concepts that we grow up with, our traditional beliefs, all of that begins to fall off and fall away, and we begin to realize that what we are is something of a consciousness and awareness that is actually at a very profound level within, one with everything everywhere. The struggle for people and the difficulty is that we grow up in our Western cultures relating to linear concepts and a greater use of the mind in how we communicate with each other. What we are at a deeper level has to do with realization and not so much to do with linear thinking. So as long as we're moving about in our conversation through the use of concepts, then we become identified with these concepts instead of being able to open up to what a profound realization is in its essence, which involves a letting go of our way of moving mentally and emotionally to be able to move on a deeper level. So that has to do with being able to relate to something we know the truth of within but don't have an understanding of. It can be understood more easily when you can think of yourself as a person, and in relating to others as a person, you know, while relating as a person, there's something deeper within than how you're relating. As soon as you are being honest within to what you're realizing that there is something deeper, then you realize that there's something of a self within that is more and deeper and finer than how you see yourself as a person with others. So in the privacy of your own heart, you begin to realize being able to move deeper within, you realize yourself, so you are a self instead of just a person. In the privacy of your own heart, when you're realizing yourself, you begin to very easily realize that there's something even deeper within than what you are as a self. So you begin to realize something of not just a self, but something of a heart level, that something moves your heart, touches your heart. You can move into a deeper heart level instead of being in yourself, and then you realize that you know something even deeper than what your own heart is. So each level that you respond to moving, going deeper and deeper, you always know from there that again there is something deeper, and instead of, the tendency is to try and understand what that depth is, and instead of trying to understand it, the way in is to just relate directly. The truth is within everything. It's within techniques, it's within the various religions. The difficulty as soon as you lay hold of a technique or a particular religion is that as soon as something begins to touch within that you know is deeper, then you relate that directly to the tradition of whatever religion it is that you're relating to, or you begin to relate directly to the technique that you're using, such as a really good example is meditation. When you meditate, your awareness opens up, you begin to know something within that's deeper than what you're accustomed to being as a person and as a self. As soon as that opening takes place, the tendency is to believe that meditation works. So you become a meditator. So then instead of being a person, now you are a meditator. So the very technique that helps also confines and locks in awareness to being something, again, that it has a form that doesn't actually reach the core. The technique itself is not the same as your own core. So instead of then working with techniques, what I give people is what it is that actually does relate most directly to what our core really is. If a technique isn't given, then the relationship takes place with what awakening is directly, instead of with the technique that facilitates awakening. It's really quite simple, and that's when, for example, you're asking how to reach these deeper levels. You're bringing up the question because you are knowing that there are deeper levels. If you didn't know that there were deeper levels, you wouldn't be asking such a question, and you would have no interest. So you're already knowing the truth of something within. You're knowing that there is something fundamentally much deeper than what all of this life is about, and how people relate as selves and as persons. So you're already knowing the truth of something within that is much more. That truth doesn't need to be first understood for you to be able to access what it is you're knowing the truth of. What gives you the access of what you're knowing the truth of is that you are already knowing what you're talking about. You're just not necessarily, or others are not necessarily understanding what it is they're knowing. The distraction is in trying to understand that they are knowing that there's something deeper within, instead of relating directly to what they already have, which is knowing that there is something deeper within. It's in the direct relating that you end up then coming from that which you're already knowing the truth of. So then there isn't a process in awakening to and entering the deep within. We have all been in that which we're looking for. You can see it in little children, really little children. The kind of openness that they have in their eyes, the kind of openness that they have in their face. We see little children, and we're absolutely delighted with the kind of innocence, the kind of purity, the kind of cleanness in a baby and a small child. They're already coming from what they are as a core, and but without the concepts, without the surrounding beliefs. So they're already naturally being what it is that we are all looking for in our complex lives. It's the direct relating within instead of trying to get there. As soon as you're trying to get there, then what you're being is the trying to get there instead of actually coming from it. It's not difficult to come from the deepest levels within. You just can't use anything that's learned to be able to do so. That's why a baby is naturally already coming from it. A small child, you can see in their eyes and their face that they have something that everyone is looking for. It's not with difficulty, it's with profound ease. But profound ease cannot involve the use of ability that we've come into in growing up. People naturally use what has worked in some way before. So the thinking mind, the emotions. Everybody knows how to use their thinking, their intellect, their emotions, their feeling. So it's natural to use what we're already able to do to be able to access deeper realms and levels within. The difficulty is that these subsequent forms to what we really are our thinking bodies, our emotional bodies, they come after what we really are. They are not what create what we truly are. So then these our mental bodies, our emotional bodies, these need to be let go of instead of using these forms that we have, instead of using these surface resources to access access what is much deeper within. Letting go of, we're able to let go of these outer forms, and letting go of what we're used to using in our lives, we naturally fall into that which we first are and we first come from. Awakening easily takes place then, and as that awakening does take place, then immediately the tendency is for people to lay hold of their mental bodies and their emotional bodies to try and help what is already flowering, opening, and being realized. What is accomplished with realization is our first real ability is realized. So that enables us to, instead of meeting with others through the use of thinking and through the use of emotions and through the use of feeling, being able to just meet directly with people. So while we are thinking, while we are feeling, while we have our emotions and our concepts, in the midst of all of that, being able to have immediate and direct contact that isn't dependent on thinking and feeling and concepts. So the result is being able to, in a sense, plug in directly with people, with nature, having that most profound oneness access that isn't dependent on thinking and that isn't dependent on feeling, and then that does open up within all of the thinking and all of the feeling. No. And yet it's easy to see the truth within Christianity as it is easy to see the truth within every religion, every philosophy, any book that you pick up, any movie or many movies you watch, there's deeper truth, profound truth easily seen and realized within whatever medium is laid hold of. So the truth really is in everything. But as soon as it's laid hold of and believed to be of a certain kind of stream, such as what is presented within each religion or each technique or each practice, then the mind begins to settle in on that the way within is a certain way, or only one particular way. And then we again limit ourselves to being stuck within a certain way of thinking and a certain way of believing, instead of being liberated from something so narrow as what's presented in any religion, and realizing the deeper levels within and not being confined to a certain way of thinking and a certain way of seeing things. What principally takes place when I'm spending time with people is it's not really so much the teaching, it's not the words, and it's not the concepts. It really is just that I am moving as awareness from within the deepest level that I've awakened to, and I'm relating directly with people. So it's the transmission that takes place in people's experience that is the real value of spending time with me. When I'm coming from the deeper levels within, that activates the deeper levels within the people who I'm spending time with. It's that activation that is the greatest value, not the concepts and not the teaching. As soon as it's reduced to the concepts and the teaching, then it becomes a part of the thinking mind again, which separates from the deeper levels being awakened to. I have been opening up more and more to just being with people. Really, it's about giving people more access to me, so then being able to ask questions or spend time with me in a different form, in a different way of relating, which gives people more possibility, more time, more access. It gives people a different way of experiencing what they're already seeing or realizing within meetings. So then they can see how naturally awareness moves and opens in how a person functions, and in what kind of how I move as a self, how I move as a person. So letting people have more of whatever they're wanting of an opportunity. They're all ways of just getting the information out, or getting out for people to experience and see for themselves that there is something more to reality than what they've grown up thinking about or having concepts of. So it basically makes for a greater possibility of people really realizing that reality is more, that there is more to reality than what they've thought about or conceived of. The specialness of it is being in proximity to that which people are experiencing within themselves when they're with me. Deeper levels opening within. So when people experience just simply by being in a meeting, profound reality within just opening up, so they have sensation of their own bodies, sensation of regions and levels within that they're not understanding, but the experience of that is something that they're knowing the truth of. So then people are realizing the value of just being close to that which seems to be giving them the experience that they're having. People value that experience more than the information that they receive. It's not the greater concepts that people are really interested in. It's the direct connection to the levels within that are opening. So when if these levels begin to open by virtue of just being in a meeting, then people gravitate toward being in these meetings, because while being there, the opening occurs. So the transmission is of greater value to people than the concepts that are spoken about.